I've been wanting to get a second grinder for the knife shop for a while, and recently I just put in my order for a Brodbeck Ironworks 2x72 grinder. And look what just showed up in the mail. So what I'm going to do today is unbox it and put it together, and then I'll show you guys how it works. Sorry about this awkward on the floor angle, but the first thing I'm going to do is going to be opening up all the boxes, so cue the time lapse. Alright, I got all the pieces out of the packaging, and they send everything disassembled so that they can fit them in flat rate boxes to keep costs down. So here we got a nice shiny 2 horsepower motor and a variable speed drive, some tracking wheels and some tool arms, and then also the drive wheel. Now I'm going to head upstairs to grab my computer and find the instructions on their website to figure out how to put it all together. Alright, so I went through all of the instructions and sorted out my pieces according to what color I want to paint them. And then I'm just going to go outside and paint them with this Rust-Oleum spray paint to protect them from rusting. I just did 2 light coats of spray paint on all of the parts, and if I were to repaint it again, starting from the beginning, I would recommend probably not painting over the areas where the grinder pieces come together, because the thin layer of paint made it a little bit more difficult to put some of the pieces together, and if I had left them bare, I think it would have slid all together a little bit more easily. Here are all the grinder pieces painted, and now it's time to put it all together and turn it on. And it's all put together. Got the 8-inch contact wheel on there. Then we've got a little buffing attachment, the flat platen, the tool rest, and finally the small wheel attachment with a couple small wheels. Got to give a big thanks to Vince over at Brodbeck for taking the time out of his day to help me on a video chat with wiring up the motor, and also helping me put together a couple of the parts that I was having a little bit of trouble with. So now let's bring it out to the shop and finally get to doing some grinding and test this grinder out. Alright, so I got the grinder in the shop, set up with my water bucket, and I also put a little LED light that I can just turn on here and direct right where I'm grinding, so I have some good lighting to see what I'm doing. And now it's time to put it to the test by finishing up this really cool raindrop Damascus chef's knife that's going to get a white resin and mesh honeycomb handle. I started the grind using a 60 grit shredder belt and just periodically dipped the knife into the water bucket that I have below to catch the sparks and also prevent the knife edge from heating up too much and ruining the knife's temper. Once I thinned out the edge all the way, I brought the knife up through a grit progression of 120 to a Trizact A100, A65, and A45, before finally using a gray Scotch-Brite belt, which should be around, I think, a 600 grit, just to give the blade a final polish before etching. Alright, so I have the blade all polished up and thinned out to around a 600 grit finish, and now it's time to etch the blade. So far I'm super impressed with how stable and how little vibration there is in the grinder, and I'm looking forward to using it more to shape the handle tomorrow. Here it is coming out of the test etch. Looks like it has a really nice pattern. And what I'm going to do next is just polish it up a little bit and then give it a coffee etch for some extra contrast. Thought I'd give you guys a quick overview of the attachments that I got in my package. So I got this small wheel attachment with a 1-inch and a 1/2 inch wheel, and then I got a buffing wheel attachment so that I can use a buffing wheel on my handles, and I could also attach a wire wheel. And then I have this 8-inch contact wheel. This one isn't from Brodbeck because I had one left over from an older grinder that happens to fit since they have really nice universal tool arms. And then I got the variable speed so I can turn it all the way down or up depending on what I want to do. And if I want to have more control, then I'll turn it down. But if I want to do things fast, I'll turn it all the way up. And then here I have the flat platen attachment as well as the tool rest. It's really nice and long and should be really handy for profiling. So to change the tool arms out, all you need to do is just loosen this lever and then pull out the arms. Then you can grab your other attachment. So here's the small wheel attachment, and just slide it into the tool slot and then tighten down that lever to make sure that it doesn't come out. One of the things I'm really excited about this grinder is that it's able to flip horizontally. So all you have to do is flip this little locking lever on the side, and then the whole machine pivots onto its side so that you can do it as a horizontal grinder. So if you have the flat platen, it's really good for profiling or on a contact wheel. And then let me stick on the small wheel attachment to show you one other thing that I'm really excited to try out doing when it's horizontal. So here's one thing that I'm really excited to try out using the horizontal flipping capability of the grinder. If you remember before when I was doing serrations on a bread knife, I had to hold the knife vertically like this and tilt my head at a really weird angle to get the serrations on the small wheel. But now since I can flip it horizontally, I can just hold the knife like this, sideways, and have a really good angle on it and be able to do the serrations much more controlled like this versus having to tilt it upwards and have to kind of eyeball it and have a much more difficult time controlling where the serrations are going. I'll probably test out doing the serrations on the new grinder, and if it works out well, then I'll probably make a new video showing how I do my serrations with the new grinder. So if you're interested in that, be sure to subscribe and keep an eye out. Last night I epoxied the handle material onto the blade and let it cure overnight. And today I went ahead and taped up the blade to protect it. So now it's time to start shaping the handle. Here I'm using a used 60 grit belt along with the small wheel attachment in order to remove all of the excess handle material from the bottom edge of the handle. Now I'm just switching over to the flat platen to remove the excess handle material from the outside of the perimeter of the knife. And then I also use the same flat platen to do the rest of the shaping. So here I start my handle shaping by putting in some rough facets and tapering the knife handle from the back to the front just so that it's more comfortable to hold and fills out the palm better than if it were a blocky style handle. Here's the handle roughly shaped. You can see that I still have some rough facets in it. So what I like to do now is remove the flat platen from the grinder and have a slack belt so that I can blend everything really nicely together. One thing that I'm really liking about the grinder is how easy it is to adjust everything using these little quick change handles. So in the past, for example, what I would have had to do to remove the flat platen is use this extra ratcheting tool. But what I can do now is just loosen up these little bolts here and then slide off the platen so that I have this nice slack belt here now. My favorite belt to use with the slack belt is the scalloped 1x72 J-Flex belt that really helps round everything together. Now I'm just hand sanding the handle from 320 grit all the way to 2000 grit to give it a nice shine. Now that the handle's hand sanded, the next thing I'm going to do is try out this buffing wheel attachment that I'm going to load up with some pink scratchless buffing compound that I got from Combat Abrasives. And the very last thing I do is sharpen the edge. I like to do that on the belt sander, and I actually have a whole YouTube video showing that process, so be sure to check it out if you're interested. That buffing wheel gave the handle material a really nice high gloss finish. It almost looks like glass now. So I'm really excited to test it out on some other handle materials like wood to see what it does. And that concludes my initial unboxing and first impressions of this new Brodbeck Ironworks knife grinder. I'm really impressed by how stable it is, and also how nice and versatile the attachments are, and how smoothly it runs. It was a little bit tough to put together, but I want to give another big thanks to Vince for letting me call him on the weekend for a couple pointers of how to wire the motor and also how to put some things together. It was a big help, and thanks again. So I'm looking forward to learning more about the ins and outs of this grinder and making some really cool projects with it. So stay tuned if you want to see those, and be sure to like the video if you enjoyed. Stay sharp, and thanks for watching.